The legislature is officially in session and lawmakers have just 10 weeks to accomplish an ambitious agenda. As Brandon Smith reports, many of the topics that will dominate their debates aren't new.
We must be free to act according to our consciences formed by our faith.
Indiana's State House became the subject of nationwide scrutiny last year after Governor Mike Pence signed the controversial Religious Freedom Restoration Act into law.
We're here today to say this isn't about cakes, this isn't about pictures.
The backlash was swift, and Democrats argue the damage hasn't been repaired.
Our state's economic future demands that we attract new Hoosiers and retain current ones of all kinds. If you have dreams for a better future, we want you here in Indiana. Already our civil rights statute has engendered much discussion in the post-RFRA era.
House Democrats are putting that issue at the top of their agenda for this year's session. They want to pass civil rights protections that will ensure people can't be discriminated against based on sexual orientation or gender identity.
I recognize that for some of you, this change might violate long-standing points of view. That's okay. But a decisive amendment to our civil rights law will make the questions go away. It will fully heal our state's image in the modern world by ensuring equality and fairness. And if you're unsure it's the right thing to do, at least embrace an end to the whole thing.
Senate Republicans unveiled their own proposal before the session kicked off. It includes exemptions for religious institutions, but the bill isn't one of their legislative priorities.
This is a group effort, and we don't have consensus on the LGBT bill, understandably so. It's controversial. We have people all over the place on those issues, and we're going to be discussing that, throughout the session.
Pence made no mention of the LGBT rights issue when he released his legislative priorities either, but says next week's State of the State address could be the right time to weigh in. One issue that both Democrats and Republicans can agree on is that road funding needs to be a priority. Pence has proposed a 4-year, $1 billion funding plan that would cover maintenance and improvement costs for state roads, using a combination of reserves and money from future state budgets. Pence has also spoken out in support of a plan authored by Republican Senator Brad Hirschman, which would take more than $400 million out of local tax reserve funds and funnel that into local road improvements.
It is part of the transportation debate. Obviously, we have to have a discussion about long-term transportation funding, but putting close to $500 million into local communities around this state in an immediate fashion to help them with infrastructure issues at no tax increase, no cost to Hoosier taxpayers, I think makes a very strong statement for our commitment not only to infrastructure but to fiscal responsibility.
Democrats call the Republican plans short-sighted. They want to divert sales tax revenue from gasoline and special fuels and split the money between state and local roads.
Before discussing new revenue, we first have to use the dollars we've already taken from the people. If much of it's merely being banked away in an account, well, the storm clouds are bursting and the rain is starting to fall. We will not generate new income for the public good if the basic economic needs of our state and its hundreds of communities are unmet.
Legislators also hope to tackle the ongoing controversy surrounding the I-STEP exam. There's talk on both sides of the aisle of ditching the assessment altogether and moving toward a nationally crafted test.
It's time to pull the plug in favor of something less sensational and more functional. Let's return these tests to being the boring diversions that they are, so our teachers again can dedicate their energies toward the joy of science, reading, and critical thinking.
This isn't a budget year, so lawmakers only have until mid-March to get through their agenda. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Brandon Smith.
If we had to boil this down to the issues that would dominate the session in a nutshell, it seems that it would be anti-discrimination legislation, road funding, drug abuse, and standardized testing. Our State House reporter Brandon Smith joins us now. Brandon, does that seem about right?
Yeah, that seems about right. Most of these issues are part of the agendas of each caucus. That's Democrats and Republicans in both chambers, particularly road funding and I-STEP. Now, protecting LGBT people from discrimination isn't a Republican priority, but it is a debate that might overshadow almost everything else.
Now, the issue many people are watching most closely is the debate over civil rights and protection from discrimination for the LGBT community. How soon could legislators start debating that hot-button issue, and is there a chance that protective legislation will pass?
Well, the bill will originate in the Senate. Senate Republicans unveiled their proposal here almost 2 months ago. But Senate GOP leader David Long says the bill won't be heard in committee until later this month, and that's going to be very close to the deadline for which bills must pass out of their original chamber. So is there a chance it will pass? Absolutely, but I wouldn't say at this point that it's likely.
You mentioned the competing proposals to fund the state's infrastructure. Don't all of them involve a tax increase, and is that really likely considering it's an election year?
Not all of them involve a tax increase, actually. Senate Republicans, House Democrats, and the governor have each proposed plans that involve a mixture of spending down reserves and some bonding. Now, House Republicans and Senate Democrats have proposed tax increases in their plans, a mix of state and local increases. And I'd say those are a little less likely to happen precisely because of this year's election.
Drug abuse has been a big topic over the past year, with Governor Pence creating his own drug abuse task force to look into the issue. Now, last week here, we talked about 2 pieces of legislation that would make pseudoephedrine, which is an ingredient necessary for meth production, more difficult to get. Are there other ideas or proposals that are coming out of Pence's drug task force?
Well, the task force wants to make Naloxone. This is a drug that immediately halts the effects of an opioid overdose. They want to make that easier to access by not requiring a doctor's prescription to get it. There's another proposal that would expand the state's Lifeline law to give people under the age of 21 immunity from drug charges if they seek emergency help for themselves or someone else. And then a Senate Republican proposal backed by the governor would create stricter criminal penalties for drug dealers.
All right, thank you very much, Brandon.